My screen is visible to you?
Yes, sir.
All right, all right. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Uh, in the last class, I have discussed about the modern fiction and the authors associated with modern fiction. Today, I will be beginning with the postmodern fictions. But before that's my strategy that before I begin anything, any author or any age, I used to give a little bit of background summary and also the historical events that took place and at that time that will help you to understand things in a better way. So that's my strategy. So let us begin this postmodern age, the introduction section. So postmodernism shares many of the features of modernism. So if you will say it is a kind of continuation of what we have already left during the modern age. Okay, but at the same time, it is also a breakaway from that because in the modern age, we have seen the two gruesome kind of war, World War First and World War Second, that has devastated the European nations. Then, in postmodern, in the modern age, we started to lament that there is no God, there is futility, no one is there to save us. So we were lamenting throughout the modern age. But when we come to the postmodern age, with the arrival of this absurdism, angry young man, and other, movement, we come to, to this kind of notion that instead of lamenting, we must enjoy because human beings life is you cannot exactly define how much you are going to live. Okay, it is very temporal. You can die at any time. So, till the time you live, enjoy. So, from that lamentation to enjoyment, things have really changed in the postmodern age. Postmodernism even goes a step further and deliberately mixes low art with high art. This is very important characteristic, mixing of the low and high art. Initially in the modern age and even before that, what happened is that classical texts were, seen as a canonical kind of text. Okay, things have been described in those texts with great honor and pride, but the low art has been discarded. They have been discouraged. But that you will not see in postmodernism. Low art mixes with the high art, the past with the future, or one genre with another. Okay, through the form of, you can say this parody and pastiche. Because of that, you can see mixing of one genre with another. Such mixing of different incongruous elements illustrates postmodernism's use of light-hearted parody, which was also used by modernism. Fine. Now, see what are the important events that took place during the postmodern time. First one is the Cold War. If you know about it, Cold War is a long battle, almost a kind of cold-blooded kind of battle, but which took place between the two great power emerged after the World War II. Who were the two great powers which emerged after the World War II? The first one is USA, okay, America, because they have made this atomic bomb, and the second one is USSR. Okay, that time it was USSR. Right now it is, this Russia has disintegrated after the fall of Berlin Wall, but before they were known as Soviet Union. Okay, so Soviet Union and America, because they have this nuclear weapon, so they were always in a clash. So this war, Cold War, started after the Second World War, and it ended with the fall of Berlin. Okay, fall of Berlin Wall in 1991. The second important event is the Vietnam War, which took place between the South Vietnam and the North Vietnam. Now, South Vietnamese are aided by USA, and the North Vietnamese are aided by Soviet Union. See, this is the part of Cold War. Actually, it was happening as a part of Cold War. Then Suez Canal crisis. If you know, Suez Canal is the canal which links the eastern and western country. Okay, eastern country with the European nations. So it plays a vital role. And this wall has been, this canal has been under the control of Egypt because it is in Egypt actually. But then the crisis took place again between this Soviet Union, USA, France, Britain. Everyone is involved in this Suez Canal crisis. Then, in the same year, 1956, student Hungarian revolution took place. This revolution was this took place in Hungary in opposition to the Soviet Union. Okay. Then in 1950, during this course of time, 1957 to 62, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Jamaica, Trinidad become independent nations. Okay, they got its freedom from Britain. Okay, like we got our freedom in 1947. In the same way, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, Jamaica, these all nations, these Caribbean nations especially, they got its freedom from Britain. So this particular Britain, they started to, I mean, disintegrate. The idea of colonialism started to disintegrate, and you can say this was also the beginning of post-colonialism. Then the Berlin crisis took place in 1961. Cuban Missile Crisis, again between USA and Soviet Union. This Cuban missile was a kind of full-fledged kind of you can say the nuclear power. Okay, they have shown their full-fledged nuclear power, both USSR as well as United Nations. But somehow this crisis stopped. Otherwise, the history would have been different, because this would have been a full-scaled war, a kind of world war which would have devastated everything, because this was a kind of nuclear war. Then from 1979 to 1990, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of Britain, first female Prime Minister of Britain. Then, with the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, with the fall of Berlin Wall, this Soviet Union disintegrated. That's why we call it Russia now. Russia and its other allies, they disintegrated into other parts. Okay, they became independent kind of country instead of becoming a Soviet Union. So these are the events. So see, so many of events are going on simultaneously with this postmodernism. That's why you see that there are angry young man movement. There is this rise of post-structuralism, postmodernism, depthlessness, the idea of capitalism, the idea of late capitalism propounded by Jameson, Frederick Jameson. So these all ideas are somehow associated with the events that were going on. Okay, fragmentation to the next level of kind of fragmentation where you never know what will going to happen with you at the very next juncture of time. Okay, then what are the key terms of postmodernism? We have pastiche, okay, the taking of various ideas from previous writings and literary styles and pasting them together to make new style. Okay, that is pastiche. Then intertextuality, a term coined by which very famous critic and also philosopher,
Juliet Christie.
Julia Kristeva. Exactly, very good. Julia Kristeva. So she coined this term intertextuality. Then metafiction, William H. Gus, G-A-S-S, Gus, he has coined this term metafiction. Okay, the act of writing about writing means, see, metafiction is simply when you are trying to say that I am writing a fiction. It's not a original story. It's a fiction. Okay, that is metafiction. So suppose in French left-hand movement, if you have read French left-hand movement, what happened? Author actually, the original author, John Fowles, he came as a character in the novel itself. So he's actually telling that it is a fiction. It's not real. Okay. So he's involving himself as a character in the fiction. That is metafiction, beyond fiction. Meta means beyond fiction, beyond fiction. Then we have temporal distortion, the use of non-linear timelines and narrative techniques in the story. Okay, non-linear. This is what you will see in French left-hand movement also. Non-linear kind of technique has been used. Then minimalism, the use of characters and events which are decidedly common and non-exceptional characters. Okay, the use of characters from the daily life instead of a grand kind of character which has been used in the Victorian age and even before that. Then maximalism, disorganized, lengthy, highly detailed writing. This is maximalism. Okay. Then magic realism. Magic realism, the introduction of impossible or unrealistic events into a narrative that is otherwise realistic. Okay, narrative is realistic, but you are trying to depict an unrealistic event all of a sudden. That is magic realism. Okay, then faction, mixing of actual historical events with fictional events. That is faction. Now, metafiction, do you know who coined this term? historiography metafiction? Can you tell me? Historiography metafiction? And TM might ask you these questions. So historiography metafiction was coined by Linda Hutcheon. Okay, Linda Hutcheon. Lindahutcheon. Linda Hutcheon. Fine. So these are the terms which you will see in the postmodern novels every now and then. That's why I have described it. And this is also the part of postmodern theory. Okay, post-World War theory. Many of the questions has been asked from these key terms in UGC-NET. So, see, this is the chronology that I have made, that 1950s was the age of austerity, then 1960s age of youth, because I have told you that student Hungary right took place in 1956. Then we have May 1968, in which a revolution took place in France. Okay, again by the students. So age of youth. Okay, then 1970s age of anxiety, because lots of war were happening, Vietnam War, then the crises like Berlin crisis, Suez Canal crisis. So it was an age of anxiety, and also that that missile crisis, Cuban missile crisis, if you remember. Then 1980s was the age of new materialism. Okay, rise of consumerism, and with the rise of consumerism, you will see new materialism. 1990s was an age of recession and preoccupation. Okay, so who are the post-war British fiction authors? Okay, so if you will see the timeline, you will see that in 1950s, Doris Lessing, William Golding, Graham Greene. These are the important figures writing during the post-war British fiction. Some important writers from 1960s are John Fowles, Angela Carter. Angela Carter uses magic realism. Muriel Spark, Angus Wilson, John Berger. 1970s, from 1970s we have Irish Murdoch, A.S. Bate. Okay. Then from 1980s we have Ian McEwan, Martin Amis, Jeanette Winterson, that we will discuss today, Julian Barnes, Salman Rushdie, Graham Swift, Kazuo Ishiguro, Timothy Mo. Now, Kazuo Ishiguro, Timothy Mo, they falls under the diaspora category. Okay, so you can also read them under that category, because they fall under this diaspora category. Many of the question has been asked from Kazuo Ishiguro and Timothy Mo. Now, let us come to this section, Agatha Christie. Okay, so Agatha Christie was born in 1890. She died in 1976. She is known as Queen of Crime. Queen of Crime. Why? Because she has written fictions which are very much, I mean, they describe this mystery as well as crime, a kind of detective fiction, and that's why she was the strong follower of Arthur Conan Doyle. If you remember, the writer of Sherlock Holmes. So he was also writing this mystery and mystery kind of fiction, where you will see this detective, this Sherlock Holmes, who was the detective in his stories. So, in the same way, Agatha Christie was the follower of Arthur Conan Doyle. She also wrote under the pseudonym Mary Westmacott. Okay, Mary Westmacott, commercially most successful women author. Okay, so till date, she is the most successful women author. She was a master of murder mystery, crime fiction. First detective novel written by Agatha Christie was The Mysterious Affair at Styles. And here she actually introduced this very famous character which has been asked in UGC NET, Hercule Pirate. Okay, Hercule Pirate. This character has been introduced in her first fiction, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. Now, what are the other major works by Agatha Christie? The Murder of Roger Ackroyd in 1926, Murder on the Orient Express 1934, The Mousetrap, very important, this is very important work, 1952, Witness for the Prosecution, 1953, Ten Little Nigger, By the Pricking of My Thumb, Sad Cypress. Now, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, written in 1926. Here again, you will find this detective, Hercule Poirot. Okay, Hercule Poirot appear in this particular novel. and he is trying to solve the murder mystery. Okay, that detective is trying to solve the murder mystery. From the title itself, it is clear the murder of Roger Ackroyd, and Hercule Poirot will solve that mystery. Then the next novel is Murder on the Orient Express. This particular novel, I mean, this question has been asked in UGC-NET. Note it down. Okay, only the title has been asked. Means it perhaps in the match the following, or who has written this particular work, Murder on the Orient Express. So it is written by Agatha Christie. Then we have the Mousetrap. Mousetrap, the title has been taken from Hamlet. If you remember, the play within a play. What was the name of the play within the play in Hamlet? Do you remember? It was Mousetrap. Okay, there was this play
Gonzaga.
within a play. There was this. Um, they have also played. I mean, they have enacted a kind of play, and they have given the title Mousetrap. Okay, so the title is taken from Hamlet, the Mousetrap. It is important play, and it was very commercially. It was very successful. Commercially, it was very successful. Lots of copy has been. I mean, it was there in the theater for long period of time. It is an important play written by Agatha Christie with a twisted ending. Okay, there was this ending you will find if you will read the plot of this particular play. Then we have witness for the prosecution. Then 10 Little Nigger. Again, 10 Little Nigger were the group of people who disappeared all of a sudden. Okay, this is a story of a group of people who disappeared. Then the next work is By the Pricking of My Thumb. If you remember, this title has been taken from Macbeth. So the witches in the Macbeth said, By the pricking of my thumb. Okay. So this title has been taken from Macbeth. Then Sad Cypress. This title has been taken from Twelfth Night. Okay. The title has been taken from Twelfth Night. Sad Cypress. Read the story of Murder on the Orient Express and the Mousetrap. Okay, you can read plot of other works that I have mentioned, but these two novels, the play Mousetrap and also the novel Murder on the Orient Express, read the plot in detail. Okay, now let us go to the next author, Jeanette Winterson. So Jeanette Winterson, a feminist author, in her work you will find multiple shift in conclusion. Okay, she also depicted gender polarities and sexual identity, and later once the relations between human and technology. Okay, in her work, you will find gender polarities and sexual identity. Apart from that, you will find that in her later fiction, she started to write about human and technology, and this is actually the part of post-human fiction. Okay, posthumanism is a broader term, and it is very current nowadays. Many of the research scholars are working on posthumanism. So it is actually the relation between humans and technology, the artificial intelligence. So she has started to write about that also. Currently, she is also writing about human and technology. So her very famous work is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. Oranges are not the only fruit. Very important fiction, and this is semi-autobiographical. A question has been asked in UGC-NET from this particular fiction. Okay, so this is a story of a lesbian girl. Okay, and this is a Bildungsroman novel. A lesbian girl and her, um, her brought up from this, from being a child to an adolescent. This is what we see in Bildungsroman novel now. So this question has been asked that what kind of fiction is this? So it is a Bildungsroman novel. This question has been asked in UGC-NET. Okay, do remember this. The characters are Jeanette itself. Okay, Jeanette. That's why this work is semi-autobiographical. She is using her name as a character. So Jeanette is adopted girl of the parent, and she is extremely religious, because her mother is also very religious. But then later on, Jeanette opens an ice cream shop where she falls in love with Melanie. Okay, another character, Melanie. and with her actually she has this lesbian kind of relationship. Okay, Janet, her mother, and Milani. So Janet opens an ice cream shop where she falls in love with Milani. So this is the story of oranges are not the only fruit. Then we have the next novel, the Passion, published in 1987. It is a picaresque historical novel about a Venetian women. Okay, Vienna, someone associated with Vienna. So, picaresque historical novel about a Venetian women. And what is the name of that woman? Villanette. Villanete. Villanette. Villanette. She was enslaved, who was set free by Henry. Okay, that girl Villanette was enslaved, but later on she has been set free by Henry, and Henry was a cook. Okay, in the novel, Henry was a cook. It was set during the Napoleon War. Okay, a kind of historical fiction. It was set during the Napoleon War. Next work is Written on the Body, 1992. Again, very important novel. One question has been asked in UGC-NET from Written on the Body. It was a postmodern novel in which writer at no point the author has described the gender of the character. Okay. At no point in the fiction the author has described the gender of the character. No gender is revealed of the protagonist in the entire novel, and this question has been asked in UGC-NET, Written on the Body. So audience will never know whether the protagonist is homosexual or heterosexual because the author has not revealed the gender of that particular protagonist. So how we will come to know that the protagonist is homosexual or heterosexual? Okay. Then we have the next work, Lighthouse Keeping. Don't be confused. Lighthouse Keeping is written by Jeanette Winterson, and To the Lighthouse has been written by Virginia Woolf. This is one of the most celebrated work. It is the story of a girl, lighthouse keeping. Okay. Then we have Stone Gods. If you remember, Stone Angel has been written by which author? Can anyone say? Stone Angel.
Margaret Lawrence.
Exactly, Margaret Lawrence. And Stone Gods, published in 2007. It is a science fiction novel, talks about brutality of war. Like I have said, her later works are related with humans and technology. So it is a science fiction work which talks about brutality of war, dehumanization that technology brings to human. Okay, what is, I mean, this artificial intelligence, this age of artificial intelligence, what it is bringing to us? We are becoming dehumanized day by day. Okay, this has been questioned in this particular novel, Stone Gods. That's why, see, stone gods. Okay, gods made up of a stone. They cannot do it. They are mere stone gods. Then we have The Gap of Time. It is a retelling of a story of Shakespeare, Winter's Tale. Do you remember this? They can ask you which novel in the following is a retelling of the story by Shakespeare. By Jeanette Winterson. Okay, retelling of the story from Shakespeare. So Gap of Time. And it is the retelling of Shakespeare's Winter's Tale. Winter's Tale. Then very recent novel by her, Frankenstein. Okay, Frankenstein, a love story, 2019. That much you need to read from Jeanette Winterson. See, what happens in postmodern novelists is that they are basically asking you the titles. Mostly they are asking the titles. They are not going so much in detail, but a few of them has been asked in detail. Okay, so at least go through the entire section of Wikipedia. This thing you can do. I mean the list of works. Do not read the entire pages that is there on the Wikipedia, but the list of works, just to remember the title at least. Okay, so oranges are not the only fruit. The Passion, Written on the Body, Lighthouse Keeping, Stone Gods, The Gap of Time, Frankenstein, A Love Story. These are the novels written by Jeanette Winters. Now, let us come to the next novelist, J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, I'm pretty sure you know this particular person because of this movie, Lord of the Rings, isn't it? So J.R.R. Tolkien, he made a particular language. The name of the language is Quenya. Okay, Quenya. Quenya is a language which has been made by J.R.R. Tolkien himself, and because he was also a lexicographer. Okay, he was also a lexicographer for Oxford Dictionary. He worked for Oxford Dictionary as a lexicographer. Unofficially, he, along with C.S. Lewis, was attached with this particular group, the Inklings. Okay, do remember this. The Inklings. These are the small details that NTA will ask you. Okay, they will not ask you something which is broadly known. They know that Lord of the Rings is very common. They will not ask you that who is the author of Lord of the Rings. Okay, they will ask you these kind of information, that who worked for Oxford Dictionary as a lexicographer, who was the friend of C.S. Lewis, who was unofficially attached to the group the Inklings. Okay, so the answer will be J.R.R. Tolkien. He was also the scholar of Old English literature, Greek language and literature, and classical literature. And this question has been asked in UGC-NET. Okay, that who was the scholar of Old English literature? The answer will be J.R.R. Tolkien. This question has been asked in UGC-NET. Do remember this. He is best known as the author of the high fantasy work The Hobbit and its sequel, The Lord of the Rings. Okay, Hobbit and its sequel, The Lord of the Rings. He produced a Middle English vocabulary and a definitive edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Middle English or medieval romance with E.V. Gordon. Both became academic standard works for several decades. He translated Sir Gawain, Pearl, and Sir Orfeo. In 1925, he returned to Oxford as Rawlinson and Bosworth Professor of Anglo-Saxon. Okay, he was very much, learned person, especially in the Old English literature. He was an Old English scholar kind of. So do remember this, because this Old English, giving emphasis to this point because this has been asked in UGC-NET. What are the major works written by J.R.R. Tolkien? The first one is Mythopoeia. Okay, Mythopoeia. So Mythopoeia was published in 1931, in which he says that he tries to depict myth as a fundamental truth concerning humanity. Okay, myth has a fundamental truth concerning humanity, that myth has somehow shaped our lives throughout the year. If you see in our Eastern philosophy, there are so many of myths. For instance, the myth of Chand Saudagar and Manusha Mangal, many of the mythical stories in our the works which has been written in prehistoric time. So he's saying that myth is a kind of part of our life. Myth has a fundamental truth concerning humanity. Okay. Then we have the next novel, The Hobbit. Okay. Mythopoeia is not a kind of novel or fictional work. It's a kind of non-fictional, you can say, non-fictional work. It's not a fictional work altogether. The Hobbit, published in 1937. The subtitle is Beer and Back Again. Again, subtitles becomes very important. Do remember this, Beer and Back Again. So in Hobbit, I'm pretty sure that many of you have watched the movie The Hobbit. So you will find human of a small size, fictional race is there, children fantasy novel. Okay, you will find a particular character, Bilbo Dagging. Okay, Bilbo Dagging. Bilbo Dagging is a character in this particular novel. He is also a hobbit. Okay, hobbit is a term given to those fighters. Okay, a group of warrior kind of. So Bilbo Dagging is a character in this particular novel. You can also watch the movie in order to remember this, but do look at the plot, so that sometimes what happens is that movies, they distract from the original story, original plot. That's why it's important to read the plot also. So, for instance, if I watch any movie, I come back and search on Wikipedia the original plot of that particular movie. Okay, instead of the representation that I have seen in the movie itself. Okay, so The Hobbit, the subtitle is Beer and Back Again. you will find human of a small size, fictional race is there, children fantasy novel, and it's a there is a character Bilbo Dagging. Then we have the very important fiction written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Worldwide, it is best selling and also best known, whether it is a movie or the fiction itself, like that of Harry Potter series. So, Lord of the Rings, published in 1954, it is sequel to Hobbit. It was published in 3 volumes. Okay, 2 books in each volume. That makes 6, isn't it? 2 volumes in each volume. So there are total 3 volumes. That makes 6 books. Volume 1, what was the title of Volume 1? Fellowship of the Ring. Fellowship of the Ring. Volume 2, Two Towers. Two Towers. And Volume 3, The Return of the King. See, only one question has been asked from J.R.R. Tolkien so far, that he was a scholar of Old English literature. But because they have asked this question, they can ask you in the next examination that who was the lexicographer for Oxford Dictionary, who was the friend of C.S. Lewis. Okay, how many volume are there in Lord of the Rings? Which novel was the sequel to The Hobbit? So these are the questions that you have to frame in your mind itself. Okay, so volume 1 is Fellowship of the Ring. Volume 2 is The Two Tower. Volume 3 is The Return of the King. And the movie is also made in this order, if I'm not wrong. One important information is that Kirill Iskov, K-I-R-I-L-E-S-K-O-B. Okay, K-I-R-I-L-E-S-K-O-B. He wrote his own sequence on Lord of the Rings. Okay, this person, Kirill Iskov, wrote his own sequence on Lord of the Rings, and he gave the title The Last Ring Bearer. The Last Ring Bearer, 1999. Okay, Kirill Iskov wrote this work, The Last Ring Bearer, in 1999, and he said that it is a kind of sequel to Lord of the Rings. Okay, it was not written by J.R.R. Tolkien, but by Kirill Iskov. Okay, fine. So in the next lecture, I will be covering Bram Stoker, Christopher Isherwood, Bertrand Russell, J.M. Priestley. They are very, you do not have to go in detail for these authors. Okay, there's very short introduction, and they have written a few works that you have to read. For instance, Bram Stoker, he is famous for Dracula only. Okay, Bertrand Russell is basically a philosopher rather than a novelist, but he has written a few of them, so that's why we have to read. And question has been asked from you from Bertrand Russell in UGC-NET. That's why we are giving him priority. Then Somerset Maugham, Doris Lessing, very important author. So we will be discussing that in the next class.